Welcome everybody to today's presentation delivered by PhD Virtual Backup. Today we're going to be focusing on the new features in the new version of PhD Virtual Backup coming out later on this month. My name is Robert Payne. I'm going to be delivering the first portion of the webinar, some slides speaking to the history of our company and an overview, and then I'm going to be joined by Sarah Doyle, who's one of our senior sales engineers here, and she's going to review the architecture of 6.0, and then we're going to finish the session with a Q&A. If you do have questions, please type them into your GoToMeeting client, and we're going to address them at the end of the session. We'll go through all of them and answer them to the best of our ability. And then after that, we will provide our full contact information. So if you would like to follow up with us for more information, you'll be able to call us directly or send us an email. And we will also be including a product demo. So as we move forward here to the next slide, you see the agenda there, and we just reviewed that, so we'll quickly move on. Just a couple of key messages that you want to keep in mind. Anytime you're partnering with a company, you kind of want to know where they've come from and really what their lifeline is. And at PhD Virtual, we're laser focused on data protection and monitoring solutions for virtual servers and desktops supporting multiple hypervisors. So we currently support both VMware and Citrix Zen Server, and we have support for Hyper-V on our product roadmap. You'll see throughout this presentation how our architecture enables some unique features that adhere to our core principles of ease of use and cost-effective solutions. So that's really what we're all about here. We believe backup and monitoring should be made simple for our customers, and it should be easy to use, cost-effective, and scalable as you grow. Just a little bit of history on PhD Virtual. We were founded back in 2005. Our first commercial product release was ES Express. It was developed by systems administrators at the time who were unsatisfied with the options available to back up VMware, which were mostly agent-based options, the same way you would back up a physical server. It was quite inefficient and still is to this day. So these individuals developed their own way to back up VMware, and that is part of the transformation that we're seeing today to an image-based full VM virtual backup software. And we were one of the pioneers of that transformation with a virtual backup appliance. As you can see, we've quickly grown over the past 6 or 7 years. We do have over 4,500 customers that have deployed various versions of our backup and monitoring software on both VMware and Citrix platforms. We've won various awards along the way. Our parent company is Insight Venture Partners. They acquired us in 2009. It's a $3 billion investment capital firm based out of Manhattan, New York. And lastly, we did also receive a strategic investment from Citrix back in 2010, and that was basically part of the development process that led us to PhD Virtual Backup for Zen Server. Lastly, on this slide, you'll see we released PhD Virtual Monitor in 2011. Take a look at some of our customers by vertical here. I would like to point out that our software is very horizontal in the sense that it really doesn't matter what industry or trade that you're in. If you're running virtual machines, either VMware or Citrix, and you're looking for an easy, cost-effective way to back them up or monitor them, you can utilize PhD Virtual. You'll see a lot of marquee names on this slide, but I would like to point out that over half of our customers are small to mid-sized businesses, and again, that is because we are the easiest to use, most cost-effective solution on the market. And lastly, on this slide, I would like to point out down below, you'll see some of our managed service provider customers. It's a growing segment for us here at PhD Virtual because we have some unique advantages that people that host data for other clients can take advantage of. So at this point, what I'd like to do is hand this portion of the presentation over to Sarah Doyle. She has a couple of slides on the architecture and the new features in PhD Virtual Backup 6.0, and then we're going to be going through a product demo in our environment, and again, we'll have a Q&A. At the end, please type the questions into your GoToMeeting client, and we will address them upon conclusion of the demo. So Sarah, if you'd like to take it from here.
Great, thank you, Robert. So as we're looking at this slide here, we're giving you a bit of the PhD Virtual Backup strategy. And as we look to the left-hand side of the screen, we can see that PhD Virtual Backup plugs directly into your virtual infrastructure. We offer a plugin for both VMware's vCenter and Citrix XenCenter. We have a roadmap that's also leading us to Microsoft and Oracle support as well. So currently we plug directly into the virtual infrastructure and we back up all of your VMs directly to your backup storage. But we also offer integrators for your physical solutions. So some of our current customers that still have the need to go to tape, we offer some solutions that will help you do that. Our approach to the PhD Virtual Backup is with the VBA, or the Virtual Backup Appliance. Now this VBA deploys as a very small virtual appliance, about 8 gigs in size, and requires 1 vCPU and 1 gig of RAM. It creates an image-based block-level backup of all of your virtual machines and can seamlessly scale within your infrastructure by simply deploying more virtual backup appliances. We currently support with each VBA up to 8 concurrent data streams, and each data stream represents the processing of a virtual disk. So by processing, I mean backing up, restoring, or replicating a virtual disk. The current features and capabilities that are in the PhD product today are replication, our true-to-dupe technology, which is source-side, our true restore technology for integrity verification of your data. We integrate directly into the vSphere and XenCenter environment. We offer dynamic recovery, which is at the full VM recovery, simple individual folders or files, and applications as well. We also support enterprise, private, and public cloud integration. Now let's talk about what's new in PhD Virtual Backup and Replication for version 6.0. We're going to have the PhD Instant Recovery, application-aware backups, full and incremental backup mode. We're having enhancements around our file recovery. There's going to be email report enhancements that are going to include HTML text. We're integrating the use of VBA tools so that you can transfer certain information between VBAs. And there's also going to be security with encryption and firewall. Let's talk about the PhD Instant Recovery, which is for our VMware customers. So currently how this is going to work is your VBA that's on your production storage is going to be backing up all of your information to your backup. So it's going to be living in the backup storage in the deduplicated and compressed state. And let's say you have a virtual machine on your production that goes down. What the Instant Recovery is going to allow you to do is instantly spin up that virtual disk that went down, and you have 2 options. So you can run that virtual disk from the backup, but if you would like to get that over into production as quickly as possible, the options you can use are either the storage vMotion, which will require a VMware enterprise license. There's no downtime. It can be a little slow, but there's absolutely no downtime for that virtual machine. The second option is going to be what we're calling PhD Motion. Now this is going to allow you to do in the background a PhD restore. It's going to be extremely fast, like our regular restore process. There's going to be a small amount of scheduled downtime in order to reboot the machine, and you don't need that VMware enterprise license. So once you get that PhD Motion or the storage vMotion in place, you're going to be back up and running with that VM in no time. Now let's talk about our application-aware backups for Exchange. And this is going to be for Exchange log truncation. How this is going to work is the VBA is going to take a snapshot of your virtual machine, communicate with the PhD tools, back up the data, send that to the backup storage, and then we'll communicate with the tools again, truncate your logs, and remove that snapshot. Now all this is done with the use of our PhD tools. The PhD tools are going to be installed in the guest, so we can actually see what's inside that machine, communicate with that VBA, truncate your logs, back up your data. We can also quiesce your machines. So there's a lot of advantages to having those PhD tools installed. This particular use case is just demonstrating the log truncation for Exchange. Let's talk about application-aware backups. So examples of other database applications are going to be your SQL Server, MySQL, any sort of custom databases that you have running in your environment, which a lot of our customers do. The PhD guest tools are going to just be a small application that's installed in the guest. It's going to perform optional quiesce of the VM, which is particularly useful in environments for Zen Server that are running the 08R2 version of Windows, because we all know that Zen Server has issues with quiescing those applications running on those operating systems. So with PhD tools, you're going to be able to do that. We're going to perform Microsoft Exchange log truncation, as we talked about before, and Exchange-specific restore functions as well. We're going to be able to also execute customer-supplied scripts for applications such as SQL Server. The other change that we're making into the PhD Virtual version 6 backup is we're going to be offering the full and incremental backup mode. Now, what this full and incremental is going to be best suited for is going to be specifically for cloud or network storage, or if you have any sort of deduplication devices that you would like to use. We found over time that this full and incremental mode is going to offer the fastest possible performance when running your backups. We are still going to completely include our PhD virtual full backup mode for any sort of virtually attached disk that you would like to back up to. The performance is really, depending on what your target is going to be. If you're going to the cloud or network storage, you're going to want to use the full and incremental. If you're going to a virtually attached disk to the VBA, then you can continue to use the virtual full process. And the nice thing around the flexibility of these two backup modes is you can kind of alternate between the two. You don't have to just choose one. You can switch back and forth between both. Now let's talk about the enhanced file recovery. So this is going to give you another option besides the typical iSCSI connection that we've offered. You're going to mount the backup to the VBA and actually present this as a CIF share. It's going to be easier to use for Linux because there's not going to be any need to mount a Linux iSCSI initiator or any sort of third-party Linux tool. It's going to be easier to share backup data to other users so they can recover their own files. We're going to support all the major file systems, NTFS, FAT, pretty much any file system that you have running in your environment, PhD will support with the file recovery. Our email report enhancements are going to be that we have the HTML format in the email reports, and we're going to give you some additional job and storage information. It's going to be very easy to copy and paste all of that information directly into Excel if you need some reports. There's going to be fewer email alerts, and we're going to also offer the test email button, which most people will be very pleased about. So here's a quick look at what the job summary report is going to look like. As you can see, it's going to give you not only the job details, but the VBA details. So we're going to let you know, if there's any retention policy, queue depths, or post-processing that's going on. We're going to give you the status of all the job details, over the total job, how much data was written, how fast and how long it took to write this data. So we're going to give you a lot of good information, and then we're going to give you at the bottom the report in that HTML format that you can just simply copy and paste right into Excel. So now let's talk about security with the encryption and firewall. So as we can see at the top, our firewall is going to allow the VBA to communicate to cloud storage, and it's going to be able to communicate through certain ports so you can get through that firewall. Our encryption is going to enable EncryptFS on the PhD VBA. We can encrypt your data in transit, which will make you more compliant with certain security policies that you have put in place. So if you need to meet HIPAA requirements, certain government requirements, that's all going to be able to be done right through our backup tool. So the VBA tools, what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to migrate VBA job information and configuration settings from one VBA to another. This is going to be particularly useful for, say, upgrade process. If you have a major release and you want to get rid of an old version of a VBA and deploy a new version, you're going to easily be able to take all the job history, the settings, and transfer all of that information with a click of a button rather than having to manually configure all of that. information. You're going to get some VBA health statistics, which I can show you in the console once we move into the demo. So now that we've finished with the slides, I'm going to go ahead and move into the product demonstration of our PhD Virtual Backup 6.0. Okay, so as we can see, this is the PhD Virtual Backup console. For our current customers, this is a familiar looking screen. As we see on the left-hand side, we're going to notice that there's quite a few additions to the tabs. And if we take a look at the backup tab, we can see that we've included some screens that are going to give you a little bit more information about what you can actually do on this particular tab. So I can see my backup is telling me, all of the tasks I'm going to be able to do, how I'm going to be able to recover them, where I can go to recover my virtual machines. My tasks are going to be to either open the backup wizard, which is going to give me a very high-level view by default of my entire data center. Now I have the option of selecting the entire data center to back up, or I can get as granular as to go into an individual machine and exclude an individual disk. So I can check that box right there. Let's say I have an Exchange box and I'm not worried about the operating system disk. I can highlight this virtual disk and hit exclude. And that way, I'll only have to back up the database. I'll hit next and select an appliance to actually perform this job, and I'll get some of that appliance information. I'll hit next, and this is where I can select to either do a virtual full. Again, this is telling me this is fast for backup and recovery, and it's ideal for backing up to the attached virtual disk. I also have the full and incremental mode, which is really optimal for target-side deduplication devices, going to tape, or even recommended for any sort of network storage target. I have my scheduling options, which are now once, daily, and weekly. I can give this job a name. I have the option to still verify my backups. By default, I'll have the option to backup powered off virtual machines. I can set my backups as archived so they won't be deleted via the retention policy. And in VMware, I have the option for chain slot tracking. So now this is where we get to the application-aware processing. So I have the ability to either select quiesce this application. Now I can use this quiesce application for using Microsoft VSS. I need to have the PhD guest tools installed in order to kick off this quiesce. And for Exchange VMs, I have the option to truncate the logs. Again, it requires the PhD tools. I can truncate these logs after a successful backup only, or I can always truncate these logs after the backup. I also have the post-backup processing, which is going to allow me to execute certain custom scripts or commands, which requires the guest tools. And I can run again after a successful backup only, or always run. I'm going to have my summary of the job, all of my options that I've selected, and I can hit submit, and I will have kicked off that job. I also can run an existing backup job, which will take me to the Jobs tab and show me where all my scheduled jobs are. Backup daily, it's inactive. If I'd like to go ahead and kick off that job, I can come up here and hit Start. Now let's talk about the instant recovery. Again, I have my screen, my introduction screen, which is telling me a little bit about the instant recovery. I can come down here and open my wizard. I can select my VBA to perform this job. And now I'm going to be able to select the VM and the date of the backup of that virtual machine. I also have a filter so that if I have a lot of backups here, I can go ahead and type in the name of the VM and look at the date range for when that was backed up. So it'll help me easily and quickly identify which machine I need to restore. So my options are going to be to give the job a name. I can use my standard recovery mode, or do my instant, which is going to allow me to run it from the backup. I have the option to automatically start the PhD motion seeding, which was going to allow me to PhD motion that instantly restored VM from my backup storage to my production storage. My recovered VM default options are I can append the name with recovered. I can power on this VM after it's recovered. I can use the original storage and network settings from the backup if they're available. I'll choose my default storage and network I'd like to go over. I can select to connect at the power on. My schedule is going to be now since it's instant recovery. And I have my usual interactive summary screen, which is going to allow me to make certain options right from the screen without having to click back through previous screens. I can come here and manage my currently instantly recovered virtual machines. So this is something that you're really going to want to take a look at because you don't want to have instantly recovered VMs running in your backup storage because it is going to consume some space. I can take a look at the history of all of my instant recovered VMs and get some trend information. So if I move down into the tools, again, I have my Introduction and Getting Started tab. This is going to give me the details around my migrating the VBA settings, my import or export the VBA settings. I can get a quick look at all my hypervisor inventory, and we have included the VBA Health Monitor. So here's where we're going to be able to migrate the appliance settings. By default, the settings that we're going to migrate are going to be pretty much everything that's configured within the VBA. My job, the history, all of the configurations that I applied when I first deployed this VBA. And this is really nice because let's say I have my VBA 5.4 version and I would just like to start fresh with a new VBA. I can select the 6.0 and just simply transfer and migrate all of these settings. So I have basically an exact replica, just a new version. I also have the option to power off the source PhD VBA before actually migrating this information. I also have the option to export and import this data into, let's say, an Excel spreadsheet if I would like to keep track of which VBA is responsible for backing up which particular VM by viewing the jobs that it's executing. I can import jobs from other VBAs. So this is going to give you the flexibility to really keep track and manage your backups. I'm going to get my hypervisor inventory, which I can go ahead and hit Load Inventory. And this is going to give me a spreadsheet of basically all of my virtual machines, their UUIDs, where their disks are located. It's going to tell me which host that it's actually on. I can get my total size in bytes, how many disks I have, and my total amount of virtual machines. My VBA Health Monitor is going to easily allow me to view any system alerts that are associated with that virtual backup appliance, whatever my current queue information is, so if there's some post-processing going on with that VBA or if there's some retention deletes going on. And this is also going to give me some trending information right here. So now let's talk about the file system encryption. How this is going to work is I'm going to come to my file system encryption tab, and I'm going to load the VBA that I would like to view the encryption settings on. I can hit Get Encryption Settings, and it's going to give me this information. And from here, I can manually put in all the information that I need to get my encryption up and running. And then I can hit Put Encryption Settings, and this will allow me to have encrypted backups moving forward. It'll encrypt my database, and it'll encrypt the data that's in transit. We still have the other features that are included and have always been very helpful for customers, such as replication. So for replication, what I'm going to be able to do is replicate any of my virtual machines that I have in my primary location. I can move over to my replicated virtual machines, highlight a replica, see that it's in the standby state over at my DR location. This is going to allow me to hit Start Test. And what that's going to do is it's going to take a snapshot of that replica and remove it from the network, which will allow me to go over to my DR location, power on that replica, and do some performance testing to make sure in the event of a disaster, I can absolutely depend on that replica. Once I'm done with my performance testing, I can come here, hit Stop Test. That'll close the snapshot and revert it back to its original replicated state. Start Failover is going to allow me to come here, highlight all my replicas, and hit Start Failover, which will assist me in failing over to my backup, to my DR location, by removing all of these replicas from that replication job. I can easily view my backup catalog to see at a high level all of the VMs that I have backed up, and I can change this view by virtual machine, state, and appliance. So that concludes the PhD Virtual 6.0 demo. We're going to open this up to now the Q&A session.
Yep, so we have a couple of questions here, Sarah. First is, when is PhD Virtual 6.0 going to be available? It's pretty simple. It's going to be available later on this month for a general release, and in the middle of August we are going to be shooting for an early access release. So if you would be interested in getting access to the early access code, certainly feel free to give us a call or an email at one of these numbers, or you can, if you have a contact with your direct sales rep, you can contact them as well. I have another question here. I don't think my VMware license allows me to utilize vMotion. How would I utilize the PhD Instant Restore if I cannot vMotion a virtual machine?
So I can take that question, Robert. So as I mentioned earlier, we have two options when doing that instant recovery. And that's going to be that you can either use your vMotion option if you have the enterprise license, or we are offering the PhD Virtual, the PhD Motion, which is going to allow you to use our tools to easily move that data over to your primary site, quickly reboot the machine, and you'll be up and running with that VM that you needed to restore without having the license.
Great. We have another one here. I'm not sure if we're going to have any concrete data on it yet, but it'll at least be a good discussion point. But it's talking about the difference in space usage, I guess dedupe, with the full and incremental mode versus a virtual full mode.
So the difference is going to be the way that maybe deduplication is handled, and that's going to be the deduplication for our virtual full process is across the entire backup data store. And that's going to give you some great deduplication ratios. But with the virtual full and incremental process, it's still going to be similar in storage usage. Again, it depends on how often you're backing up and how much data is in your environment. So it's going to be different for everybody's situation. But deduplication is going to be done across, the full and incremental to the next full. So it's just that one chain of full and incrementals that we're going to dedupe across.
Okay. Next question here is relating to Active Directory. Do you have trust relationship issues with Active Directory when you recover a VM from an older version?
None that I haven't particularly come across. I know that if you're doing a complete, full restore, obviously there's not going to be any issues. If you're talking about individual objects, it shouldn't be an issue. It depends on how you're going to handle that process. So typically what we do right now is we'll mount the database or the existing information to a current running Active Directory virtual machine and do the restore process through those native tools.
Thank you, Sarah. Next question here, does the exporter still exist, and are there any other changes that maybe we haven't mentioned in this presentation?
So as far as any other changes, no. We pretty much put everything that we have in the presentation. If you have any personal questions that are related directly to your environment, you can definitely use the contact information on your screen to get in touch with us, and we can schedule some time to have that discussion. As far as the exporter, yes, the exporter is still going to be in place, and the exporter will be used for the virtual full backup mode, and that's going to allow you to export your data, your backup data, to that temporary storage and reformat into a compressed OVF. That's for those of you who are not familiar with our exporter. So yes, that's still included in the product, and if you do have the requirement of going to tape, the full and incremental process backup mode is going to be your best bet for quickly going to tape.
Okay, another specific use case here. Caller is asking, our DR site has different IP ranges. When a recovered VM comes up in the DR environment, how is IP addressing handled?
So really that's depending on how you're talking about coming up, bringing that VM over to that DR site. If you're referring to replication, then you can customize those settings within the replication wizard to determine that you're on different networks. If you're just going to do a restore, then you can select, use a different MAC address. There's certain options that will allow you to handle those two different networking between the two locations.
Okay, so I believe if there's no further questions, which it doesn't look like there are, that's going to conclude today's presentation. I would like to thank everybody for joining us. Again, this solution is going to be generally released in the next 30 days, so it's going to be very exciting here. We're going to be having more of these webinars over the next coming week, so make sure that you take a look on our webinar schedule. We've also have a recorded copy that we're going to be posting to our website. So if you'd like to take a look at it again, you'll be able to do so. We're going to be at VMworld as well, the last week of August, August 26th through the 30th. PhD Virtual is booth number 314, and we're obviously going to be very heavily demoing version 6. So please, if you're there, make it a point to stop by. We're going to have a lot of great contests, great giveaways, and things like that. So if you do have any further questions, again, feel free to send us an email to sales@phdvirtual.com. You can call us directly in the USA and Canada. That number is 866-710-1882. And for our international audience, country code +1 267-298-5320. That's going to conclude today's presentation. My name is Robert Payne. I'd also like to thank Sarah Doral. Thank you, everybody.